Think of it like an onion. The center of an onion was some idea somebody put into our heads very early on. Investment property. Ooh, that's high risk. Okay, that's the center. Then a layer forms over that. Somebody else, maybe your neighbor is peppering in your ear, ooh, you can lose all your money. You can lose your money. That's another layer. And then another layer forms and another layer forms. And by the time they get to me, there's this entire onion that I need to peel back and truly understand. Before we even talk about real estate,
Yeah.
it's that question of why haven't you started yet?
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek podcast. Today we have Tony Lopes. He's a first generation American CEO of Dirty Boots Capital. I love that name. He's a real estate professional, best-selling author, coach, and speaker. He earned a BS in mechanical engineering and an MBA from UMass. He worked in the defense industry for 19 years. We'll get into a little bit about that. As a lot of people, I'm former military, so we'll get into some of the defense stuff in his background. But while he did that, he was building a portfolio of residential income properties, and along with his understanding of markets and economics, it allowed him to retire at 44 years old. We'll get into that and what that means to be retired, and is he really retired? But he's sharing his knowledge and experience. He loves to give back so that others can achieve financial independence, enjoy the same level of freedom he does. Welcome, Tony.
Mike, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure. It's always nice to talk to another real estate guy, Um, so very shortly, I've had some people go down. They said, well, I went to kindergarten here and I went to elementary school. And my mom was this age. I don't want all that, but give me a
Yep,
brief survey of who Tony Lopes is, where are you from, and how
sure.
did you get started from mechanical engineering to real estate, real quick.
Yeah, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version for sure. So I live in both New Hampshire as well as Florida. I grew up in Massachusetts. Um, and so the Northeast is a place I love to be, four seasons. But it's too cold in the winter as I've gotten older, so I needed to find a warmer climate. So here we are in Florida. So that's where we are. But you know what? Probably like a lot of your audience, a lot of your listeners, I grew up in a household. My parents were immigrants, right? They migrated to this country probably like a lot of your listeners out there, right? And again, probably like a lot of your listeners, I was handed down the probably similar tablets from my parents of go to school, get a good education, you'll
Mhm.
get a great job, and you'll be taken care of forever, right? That's a pretty standard mantra. When I talk about that, people
Yep.
like they resonate with it, right? So I'm no different. I'm not any special skills or anything than anybody else. So I did just that, right? I did what my parents told me to do. Went to school, got a great education, as you read off. Mechanical engineering degree and an MBA, very popular degrees, engineering and business. So I did that. I did get a great job, and then 4 years later, I got laid off.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute, Mike, this was not part of the mantra I was handed down, right?
Yeah.
And this wasn't part of it. And it was a wake-up call at that point for me. I was 28 years old, thereabouts, 28 years
Oh.
old.
Hmm.
And I'm like, this is not how I want my life to start. So I wasn't financially independent at the time. So I had to get another job. Okay, so I did that, but quickly thereafter, I said to myself, I needed to find additional avenues for cash flow to protect myself, right? Nobody's going to do it. My parents, they were immigrants. They had to go figure out their own retirement and their own, thing, right? I wasn't going to, go crawling back to mommy and daddy. I had to figure out my own thing. And plus, they would have told me, hey, young man, you go figure it out, right? They
Yeah,
had to figure
that's
out
right.
their own thing, right? It wasn't this coddling of people that we have these days, right? We have a
Yeah.
very weak culture. We need a stronger culture. And my parents
Amen.
subscribe to that. They were like, hey, you're a young man. We sent you to school. You have a ton of education, more than we have. You go figure this out, right? So I didn't even dare, crawl back to them in any way. So I had to figure that out on my own. And for me, real estate was an interest of mine.
Yeah.
I knew I could do it. I liked running spreadsheets and running the numbers and doing the analysis and the whole bit. And so that's what I gravitated towards. And I purchased my first building, which was a Class C building. It was, man, I made
Yeah.
all the wrong mistakes on my first property. I made all the wrong mistakes, right? I didn't know shit from Shinola, Mike, right? I didn't know
Yeah.
cap rate equations. I didn't know how to do cash on cash equations, right? I didn't know, right? And I share this story because like we were saying before you hit the record button, you and I were, we're not extraordinary people. We're just like everybody else, right?
Mhm.
We take different risks, right? We put ourselves out there, and the reward comes to those who take the risks, right?
Mhm.
Calculated risks. You take calculated risks as well as I do. And that's really what's led to your success. My success is putting ourselves out there, following people who have come before us, right?
Yep.
That's one way that we take our calculated risk, right? I don't reinvent the wheel. I just go look at people who've been successful doing what I want to do. It's that easy. And so I follow that mantra that they
Mhm.
were so successful at. And so that's what led me to building up my real estate portfolio from there while I was working, right? Again,
Yep.
calculated risk. I didn't quit my job right away.
Mhm. Yeah.
Calculated risk. I continue to work my day job, my W-2, right? Get that paycheck, which was very valuable because when I went to the banks for mortgages, they saw me as a very
Yes.
safe, right? Safe risk
Yeah.
for the bank, right? More so and truth be told, honestly, today I have more pushback from institutions, from banks, because today I'm essentially unemployed, right? I
Hmm.
don't have a W-2, right? I don't have a standard paycheck. I have investments that pay me, but because I don't have that standard
Yeah.
weekly or biweekly paycheck coming in, they
Hmm.
see that as a little more risk. They're not used to that. So it's actually it can be harder. People find this funny, but it can be harder for me to actually
Hmm.
get a mortgage, get a loan from an institution.
Yeah. And you hit on a couple really, really good points, Tony. Number one, ladies and gentlemen, it's not an HGTV episode. Okay. You're not going to be successful in an hour episode and you're going to be flipping the houses or all these sort of things. It's harder than that. And Tony mentioned about the W-2. The importance, I listen to all these young kids. It's like, yep, I'm going to quit my job and flip houses and I'll just get hard money. And I'm just like going,
Yeah.
you know, um, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to, but, and the most important of what I did, ladies and gentlemen, and Tony it's right along what he said. My wife had a W-2.
Mm.
It allowed me to quit my job and do it because she had a W-2. And Tony is spot on 100%, where the banks don't like entrepreneurs. I tried to buy, I was worth tens of millions. And we like to leverage. I went in to buy a rental that was $160,000. They wouldn't give it to me because they wanted to see all of my LLCs, all of my K1s, all of my W, all that stuff. And they're like, well, Mike, you don't make any money. You're showing losses on all these companies. I'm like going, yeah, I've got a good CPA.
Yep.
I'm showing
And
losses.
that's the
They're like
beauty of
going,
real estate, right? That's one of the beauties of real estate, but you have to know how to play it. And there's the pros and cons.
yeah,
And but that's what you show people how to leverage, how to do these things. That's what I show people through my coaching. What I try to, leverage certain things, right? Having a W-2, leverage that.
yeah,
Leverage the fact that you are lucky enough to have a standard paycheck coming in. They love that. Leverage it.
yep,
You can also leverage. I have so many people say to me, Tony, where do I get my down payment for this? I'm like, well, do you have a 401k? Yeah, I have 401k. Leverage your 401k. Borrow from yourself. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody because sometimes I get, people bang on me for this. Oh, you should never borrow from your 401k. Again, you have to do it smartly with a plan in mind, right? With a strategy, low risk, right? To basically say, okay, I have this available to me that I can leverage. At the end of the day, I'm paying myself back for that money that I take out of my
The
401k,
loan. Yep. It's a
that
loan.
loan, right? With interest, you're paying yourself back with interest, plus you're giving yourself that opportunity to go off and buy a property, an investment property that you otherwise would not have been able to buy, right? So there's beautiful leverage there that can be had if you have a W-2, something that Mike nor I have. So
Yeah.
you're right, you're starting off in a good space.
You are absolutely. What are, it's kind of funny when I speak in front of, when I do conferences, I see the same people. And I'm like, okay, did you buy your first house yet? Was that, yeah, well, the interest rate's right. Well, this, I get five or six excuses. Well, one more seminar, you know, to you, when you go through the coaching and you're teaching people, what is it, that mindset? The hardest part is jumping off that into the deep water, right? It's taking
Yeah.
that risk.
So when I do coaching, Mike, it's um obviously it's a lot of real estate stuff, but
Mhm.
I would have been better served with a psychology degree than a mechanical engineering degree. And I don't say
Yeah.
that to be mean or anything like that, but it's
Yeah.
like the way we are, we're animals and we all kind of do the same thing. And it all starts with, think of it at like an onion. The center of an onion was some idea somebody put into our heads very early on. Investment property. Ooh, that's high risk. Okay, that's the center. Then a layer forms over that. Somebody else, maybe your neighbor is peppering in your ear, ooh, you can lose all your money. You can lose your money. That's another layer. And then another layer forms and another layer forms. And by the time they get to me, there's this entire onion that I need to peel back and truly understand before we even talk about real estate.
Yeah.
It's that question of why haven't you started yet? And that's
Yeah.
not to pick on anybody, right? I'm not,
Mhm.
it's to under, because I need to help that individual get over that first, right? Because if they don't get over that, I'm just going to be working with them for 6 weeks, 6 months, a year. I'm just going to be working with them and wasting my time. I need to break through. I need to have that major aha moment. The same thing like me. I was conditioned a certain way, and my parents gave me the mantra, and until I got laid off, until I had that major
Yeah.
smack upside the head, I wouldn't have figured it out. I had to have that moment. And that's the moment I need to have with people when I do coaching, that psychological moment, right? So I have a process that I go through with folks to get there quicker.
Hmm.
And once we're there, we work to fix that because that's what needs to be fixed first. A lot of people enter into these things with big thing is fear. And we have to understand, well, what's that fear? In many
Hmm.
cases, it's fear of, not knowing, not
Hmm.
being educated, right? And so we need to get over that hurdle. We need to educate ourselves. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that today. Today it's amazing. We live, Mike, we live in an amazing world. When I started doing this 20 years ago, I didn't have social media to
That's right.
leverage the people who were doing it. You know, to buy books, it was Barnes and Noble and maybe Books a Million, right? I didn't have the resources of going to thrift books where I could buy. And even today, I'll be honest with folks, even today, I go to thrift books online, thriftbooks.com, where you can buy used books for like $3, $6,
Hmm.
right? It's so cheap to buy a book and read and learn and get educated, right? Podcasts, what we're doing here today, right? I didn't have
Right.
those, right? There's so many things and resources we have today to
Yeah.
get educated. It's amazing what's out there, and we should all leverage these things. So
It's
and so
almost no
that's
excuses, right? I mean, it's almost, it's
yeah,
unless it's information overload, you know. That's,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
And
you and I are old enough to where I call it, when I'm on podcasts, I call it the PG days when I got started in real estate, the pre-Google days.
Yeah.
It's like I couldn't thumb through the yellow pages on how to be a landlord. I mean, it just didn't, you know.
That's right. And now today it's amazing. I was just sharing with somebody else. So doing podcasts and things like that, you get introduced to so many amazing people that you can actually have
Mhm,
conversations with. Whereas
mhm.
before, if you like watch TV, like I used to watch like Tony Robbins and things like
Yeah,
that, right?
sure.
His energy, just amazing, his energy, and just a month or two ago, I was speaking with one of his previous marketing executives. And I was like, this is so wild. I would have never, had I not done certain things, right? Pulled on certain levers that we have today that we didn't have back then. 20 years ago, when I was watching Tony Robbins, I didn't have those levers to pull on. But today, we have them. We all have them. And now I'm talking to one of his former marketing executives. Do you think that's incredibly valuable to me as a business
Yeah.
person? Of course it is to learn and engage with somebody at that level. Huge.
Well, people would pay tens of thousands of dollars to have lunch, just lunch with these people, and that's
Yeah.
why, ladies and gentlemen, the networking. Never stop learning, never stop having a coach like Tony, and never stop learning. It is, I still learn. I still have my mentors. I still have my, um,
Yeah.
it never stops because in these networking groups, I found one of my future partners that was in the hotel business. I'd have never gotten into hotels if it wasn't for knowing these people and just opening my mouth and saying, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" You know, it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
And
amazing.
sharing, these networking events that we go
Hmm.
to are tremendously valuable. And I can share so many examples of things,
Yeah.
right? Where in a networking event, that's a great opportunity to share with others your goals, what you're trying to achieve. Because when you're there and you're telling people about these things, these are people who potentially can help you, right?
Hmm.
So, and I'll give you for an example. I was a couple weeks ago. I was at this REI Summit at Sea event. Great event, great people. Somebody was presenting. They were talking about their real estate experiences and where they want to go with things. A young woman, doing amazing things for a young woman. She's in her 20s, and she had shared with her, one day I want to buy my own private island. And that struck me. I'm like, oh wow, that's a great goal to have. And she had a vision of it and what she wanted to do and build it out and grow it and create some cash flow for herself. I'm like, that's great. Later on, I met up with her after she shared that vision, that goal of hers. And I'm like, do you know anybody who's actually bought a private island? She's like, no, I don't. And I'm like, well, would you like to meet some people who have? And kind of pick their brain and maybe get some some experience there. And so she's like, "Wow, that'd be great." And so I'm connecting her with, there's an individual who bought a private island, and then there's another individual who develops private islands, right? Develops private islands in the Caribbean, right?
Hmm.
So, do you think those are important people for her to meet? All she did was open her mouth and say, this is my dream. This is my
Yeah.
goal. I want to buy a private island. And there was someone in the audience who took
Yeah.
notice and
That's right.
said, let me connect you. Now, maybe something will come of it, maybe nothing will come of it. But unless we go to these networking events, unless we open our mouth and say, this is what I'm looking to do, unless somebody tells me, Tony, I want to buy a single family home. Tony, I want to do Airbnb. Now, I don't do Airbnb, but you know what? I have rock stars that I know that do Airbnb and are awesome at it.
Right.
Do you think those are valuable people for you to meet and know and have a private introduction to? People who you would probably never even meet. Uh,
That's right.
But
That's
you,
right.
you got to talk. You got to talk to us. You got to let us know. So networking, like you say, huge.
Huge. Now let's talk about huge. You retired at 44. How did you do it? What would you concentrate on? Did you build up a portfolio, single family, multifamily? What's your secret?
Yes. Yeah. So my swim lane is multifamily. I love multifamily. I love part of the genesis of it all is I love all things macroeconomics. I love
Hmm.
studying macroeconomics, understanding the forces that are not just economic related, but also political and geopolitical and societal different factors that are happening that are pushing us towards the multifamily space. So that's my swim lane, right?
Yeah.
That's my swim lane that I operate. I know it incredibly well, and we do great things with that. I'm not saying that investing in single family is bad. I'm not saying if you invest in a storage units that that's a bad thing or RV parks. That's just not my swim lane, right?
Yep.
I can talk about it, but that's not really my swim lane. My swim lane is multifamilies. That's what I do, right? And so I just started slowly, right? My first one was a fourplex. It was a
Hmm.
Class C, the wrong neighborhood, the wrong tenants, the wrong
Oh,
building. Again, I did all the wrong
yeah.
things, but from there, I bought more. I bought more. I got into building spec homes, experienced that, decided, not really what I want to do, wasn't my full interest. So I went back to multifamily and just built from there. The secret, you ask about the secret. So really the secret is this to retiring early. Understand what your expenses are or will be at the point you want to retire. Say you want to retire in 10 years. Understand what are my expenses at that point, either today or in 10 years when you want to retire. What are my expenses at that point? And then you have to have enough real estate with enough cash flow coming in to cover those expenses, right? If you have enough income coming in the door through real estate to cover your expenses, essentially you can retire, right? It's a pretty simple equation. Income equals expenses. You can say bye-bye to the day job. Now, for me, I was an engineer. I had my spreadsheets. I had it all mapped
Hmm.
out, very detailed. I put a factor of safety on it, right? You come from the airline industry, you understand
Yeah.
factor of safety, right? So I put a factor of safety of 2 on it, right? That was just
Hmm.
me. And again, just calculated risks, right?
Yep.
Calculated risks. We want to be safe. So I put a factor of safety of 2 on it. And I said, I want to make 2x my expenses, right? In case anything goes wrong with my building, if I have tenants move out and reduce cash flow, I still want to cover my expenses, right? And I want to live. I want to live well. I didn't want to just like, sit at home and watch TV. I wanted to vacation. I wanted to have experiences. So I needed money to do that. So for me, I put a factor of safety of 2
Hmm.
onto that number of income, cash flow that I needed. And that's really the secret. And so, you know, I could have left sooner had I wanted. I could have retired in my 30s if I wanted.
Hmm.
But it just wasn't it's a case by case basis, right? What's right for Tony Lopes
Hmm.
may be different for Mike, may be different for Jim, may be different for Sally. There's no judgment. And we need to, I encourage folks to think, what do they want?
Hmm.
And that can be a very hard question. You're shaking your head because I know you've been there too, right? You think about, and when you get to the point where, you know, finances, so to speak, the money doesn't matter,
Right.
you start to think about what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? Now that I'm no longer racing every day, getting to the
Hmm.
job, making a buck, paying my bills, in the rat race, now that I'm no longer doing it, what do I want? Right. You don't need to do podcasts, Mike, right? You don't need to do what
Right.
you do to help communities go and speak with folks and network and try. You don't have to do that. And the same here. That's not to be braggadocious. We do it because we love the community. We
Hmm.
love helping people. We love it when the light bulb goes off and people get excited and they say, I can do that. Thank you for encouraging me. Right? I just met so funny in our community here, we have um, a group of mailboxes where all our mail is delivered.
Yep.
And I went down there to check on the mail, and then here I am, just walking down there checking on it, and I run into this neighbor of mine that I see occasionally. And he has the little baby in the stroller and the whole bit, and we start yakking about stuff, and it turns into real estate. And so he's like, "Oh yeah, I always right? I always wanted to get into real estate. I always wanted to invest, right? And so I start to peel back that onion, right? Well, why? You're 42 years old. Why haven't you? And
Mm-hmm.
so we start decomposing that. And so we start talking a little bit more. And, he's, again, he has a relatively newborn, maybe 1 year old little girl in the stroller. And I say, if you start doing this today, in 10 years, do you think that's going to make a difference in her life? Right? In 20 years, right? When you have to start paying for college
Mm-hmm.
or pay for a wedding,
Yep.
do you think that's going to help her?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so he was like, yeah, right. And so some of this stuff, and it's amazing when I go through coaching, there a lot of folks who think they want to do it for cash flow,
Mm-hmm.
which we all love, right? We all love that because it gives us freedom to do what we really want to do. But some of these folks, I'm going to say to a greater extent than what some may think, it's for legacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's for providing a better life for the next generation, right? Oh, I want to create a portfolio so I can leave it to my kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I see this world isn't going in the right direction. And
Yep.
I'm not here for gloom and doom, but there's a lot of things that are going off the rails. And there's a lot of like older people with gray hair, like you and me, who kind of look at it and say, wow, we want a better place for the next generation. And so that's why you do what you do, I do what I do, and people invest in real estate because we're all trying to help each other get to a better place.
Yeah. I know some people, Tony, that will buy a single family house for each of their kids, and all the proceeds of that rent goes towards whatever that annuity is for the college education. And then once they graduate college, they get to keep that house. And now they have college paid for. They have now a stream of money while they're in college that they can use for the food and all that sort of stuff. But it's fantastic. Tony, it's been a pleasure having you on. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that you can get out of this is, why do I keep having people like Tony on? I talk about the hotels, we talk about all the different ways to diversify your portfolios. And it's to build that life. For me, it's the why. For me, it's to build the life that I don't need a vacation from. I'm on vacation every day of the year because I love what I do. I can do it anywhere in the world. And Tony can do that. I can do that. And we're not bragging because look, I'm from a trailer park in small town Indiana. If I can do it, Tony, first generation American, there's no excuses. You just have to jump in, trust yourself, get the education, and just do it. Tony, is there anything else before I let you go that you'd like to enlighten our guests with?
I'm gonna throw out a couple of book recommendations out there because I
Yep.
always love, I love books. I love working to help people there, and they're super cheap, right? So the first book is called The One Thing, right? It's written by Gary Keller. The One Thing. It helps folks to achieve clarity and focus in what it is they're striving for, right? The one thing, right? There's a lot of things in our life. Our lives are very, very complicated. Kids, families, school, work, bills, very complicated. That book helps us condense that. What is the one thing that's very important to us? One thing, one
Mm,
goal that we're trying to strive for. That's one book. The other book that I love is a book by Stephen Pressfield. It's called The War of Art. The War of Art. It's a great book that helps us understand resistance. What are the things preventing us from achieving greatness,
mm,
right? If I want to
mm.
go to the gym every day and it's like, oh, gee, but I haven't been successful at going to the gym every day and eating less, like, what's the resistance there? Well, the part of the resistance is I go to a grocery store and I fill the refrigerator with junk food and the cabinets with junk food. That's resistance. I have to stop that. I have to realize that's resistance,
Yeah.
right? Resistance is I'm trying to go to the gym after I've completed a full day of work and I'm tired and I don't have the energy. So I need to flip that resistance. If I know that's resistance, I need to start going to the gym first thing in the morning. Make it a priority. Before going to work, set the alarm early. Let's go to the gym. Find a workout partner that if you don't show up, you're now letting them down too,
That's
right?
right.
So it helps that book, the War of Art, helps us understand what is resistance in our lives that is preventing us from achieving greatness,
Hmm.
right? So those are two books that I share. Hopefully, it adds value to the audience.
Absolutely. Well, I wrote them down, and you're never too old or never too um, comfortable to understand what my R's are, and it's a struggle every day. No matter how successful you are, those things are a struggle for everybody. Um, every day they get up, it's just, but those people that are able to use a default calendar, um, get those things under control and go out and say, you know what, I'm tired. I don't care if I'm tired, I'm hitting the gym. And for me, it's sometimes I have to call myself, a couple names, you know, to encourage myself to get, my butt up.
Yes, sir.
But you do whatever it takes in order to conquer those R's, those resistance. Tony, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on. I appreciate you coming on. Everybody, Tony Lopes, first generation, retired at age 44. Listen to this podcast to find out why. And thank you for listening to another episode of the Richer Geek podcast. Take care.